Hey guys, this is part two. We'll just start a new video. Welcome to this video. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome. Welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness and the highest levels of love light. I want to go into a little Q&A. I've been asked some questions, and this has come up a lot in sessions, but also just questions in general. People have been asking me about astrology. I don't know much about astrology. It never sticks for me. I've had a couple sessions with really great astrologists, and they've given me all this beautiful information, and poof, it just goes out the door for me. So I'm going to tune in and see what the guides have to say. A question had come in about Pluto being in some transit, or I have a feeling that the guides are going to be much more just all around informative, not necessarily about any particular transits, but and this isn't about astrology. I have a feeling this is going to be about what's going on energetically, and I'm seeing maps on a puzzle. So let's just see what the guides have to say. And again, I invite you to be open-hearted and open-minded about this. I'll remind everybody I do not know anything about astrology. So whatever comes through is just going to be, from my own perspective. If you guys are interested in astrology, I follow people on Instagram that are good at it, and also YouTube. So you can check those out and maybe kind of look at come to your own conclusions. And so things have shifted. There is a shift in the planetary alignments and conjunction points. You may think of these as maps or nodes on a brain, and the brain of the mapping system is a series of neurotransmitters, we will say. It fires like synapses, and when these synapses fire and make conjunctions, they create a new map or a new place on the map, or potentially a new synapse that carries with it more information. So many people are tuned into astrology, and they have a particular ideology about how that looks, about how it operates, and the functionality is then interpreted in a myriad of ways. We have many different renditions of this particular artistic format of interpretation. Now, the ancients clearly used astrology to build their sites of technology that allowed them to map more fluently with the energies that were coming in from the star system. And yet, here we are in a completely different system. So, how is it? You might ask that some of the stars still align with ancient sites if we are in a completely different transit. We might say that this is an overlay, if you will. And so even though certain things are still aligned, there are also things that are misaligned. For some of the stars move, and some of the stars are sequentially mapped to where they hold a steadfast vocabularic signature, play on words. These particular unmovable stars are still movable, for all is changeable. And this will be difficult for some people to understand, and others will say, no, this is not true. And we would venture to ask, what is true? For our truth is based on the story, his story of what has been told to us, passed down in generational knowledge, and yet we are in a different generation. We are generating a different map. Therefore, the map that we associate our reality and the structure with is also regenerative. So while astrology is a powerful induction point, let me play with this, because I talked about induction points in reference to something else the other day. Okay, clearly this didn't stick either, but so induction points. So they said astrology can be a very powerful induction point. In physics, it's a charging is a method used to charge an object without actually touching the object, to any other charged object. Okay, I'm being called to play with this in a little bit. Also, the induced electrical field is perpendicular to the magnetic field. Okay, let's look at this one. So, okay, here I just went. So we've already seen that the electric and magnetic fields are closely related, since what one observer sees as one type of field, another observer in a different frame of reference sees as a mixture of both. So the guides just said that we're in an overlay. So this would be both. The relationship, I'm on Libra Texts, by the way, .org. Figure shows an example that doesn't even involve two different frames of reference. The phenomenon of induced electric fields that are not due to charges. All right, so we'll have to go to that. And so the other, I'll come back, I'll save this link. And this talks about the process occurring in 2 steps. And I'll have to go into that later because it's complicated. But so while astrology can be a powerful induction point, charging point, right? I'm seeing the combination of the words that they're using here to describe this as an overlay. We would venture to say that it is based on the observer's experience. So even though these astrological anomalies are sometimes a very direct reflection of what humanity is experiencing or expressing at the time, it is also changeable. And it is based on the observer experience. And this is difficult to convey. And many people will not like what we have to say in regards to this topic because it is in regards to topography. So we would say that astrology has a beautiful base and it has a beautiful geometry, a beautiful configuration that maps into it. Yet if the confines of space are geometrically reconfiguring, we would venture to say that the confirmation or definition of definitive alignments would also be interacting and exchanging energy in a different way of frequencies that adjust with the anomalies that are being expressed through the human morphology of the human experience. And everything is a direct reflection from your reality, human reality, of the human experience, for this is all being seen and projected from our perspective. However, of course, there are certain set definitive patterns that keep us on course. And we would say that these are musical harmonic references that create a magnetic attribute to how planets, stars, and other mass objects that are floating and moving and bumping into each other in space coordinate. Coordinates of these masses or objects or living planetary systems are exchangeable, interchangeable, interfaceable, interphasable, and so on and so forth. So let us come back to the frequency that is being operated from Earth. You have ancient sites that are lined up with star systems that still line up with these star systems from the perspective of the human ability and technology to interpret it that way. Okay. Interesting. All right. So let me just kind of see where they want to go with this. This is difficult to explain because of our linearity and idea of how things work. And we would venture to say that based on some systems that are overlaid and interwoven and mapped into our geography, the topography is accurate. And which system, you might ask? Is it Vedic? Is it, I'm seeing something with the K. Is it Western? Is it? And each of those geometries holds a different mathematical configuration of how these planets align. And they are all based on, we would say, a graph system. There is a focal point that is used to graph out. I'm seeing the circle and the lines that they use. However, if Earth is expanding and the rate of speed in which she is expanding, and all things are expanding at that same exact rate of speed, would those shifts also need to shift according to map out the new topography of the geometry and mathematical expressions of where these planetary lineups are occurring? And I'm just being guided to ask that question. So I'm waiting for an answer, but I'm not getting anything. And we would venture to say yes and no, because as we grow, so too does our vocabulary of the reality or the view in which we describe and accountability, our reality and how it works. So we use technology to map out these things. And while these numbers are very consistent in many ways, we know this because of proof from telescopes, or let us say landing on the moon, that give us mathematical components that say this is accurate and this is not. However, the topology of the reality that we are all woven into is not totally visible or viewable from where it is that you sit now. And that is applicable to all of us that are currently on Earth. We might say, how is that possible? For our technology can see well past Earth. It can see below, above, and all around. We have satellites circulating the Earth, and that information is what gives us the feedback to give us the proof that we need in order to describe our reality. And this is true. However, there is more than meets the eye, and we call it back again to the pie. The piece of the pie that has been handed out is missing some clarification, and the distortion in how time interacts with this particular piece of the pie is part of the solving of the problem. And yet the problem, like a mathematical problem, can never be truly solved until this distortion is seen through, and moved aside. For we are only seeing one side of the equation that is giving us access to only a partial view of our reality. And therefore, what is being reflected back to us is our perspective based on our partial view. So once we move through this distortion, more will be available to us. And we would say that more and more of you are learning this information. But we would invite you, I'm hearing, but wait, there's more. Not to get hung up on the totality of that information, because much of our ancestral knowledge is also being withheld. So we can only base our assumptions, graphing, around the graphics that are available to us. Artificial intelligence will help us break through this pattern and cycle. And we will start to be able to better understand the implications of our land, of where we have landed, and where we will be finding more land. Newa eshiki kina akuniwa ashun kuba eshikini kiwa nunu kushi. While these are not direct answers, we hope that you will read between the lines and recognize that sometimes part of the gift is in the surprise. Part of the surprise is the gift because it will give us new light with which to see. It will give us a new perspective on reality that allows us to shed light, on the focal point of where we have been aiming, where it is that we have been looking, and how much we have been thinking we need to calculate in this depth of light. For within this space and frequency of no time, there is an object that has distorted our idea and therefore pattern around the frequency of no time. And this object is creating a pattern that has yet to be understood. This particular object is a node, we could call it, in the astrological signaling. And so if this node bounces back information to us that does not yet have the capability of being understood, all numbers will not add up. They will temporarily, based upon a geometry that we have been told is the baseline of the base frequency of the piece of the pie of life. Hearing the pie in the sky. And I'm hearing Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Is that the song? And this is something that will really get our juices flowing, so to speak, because I'm hearing tongues wagging like, what? This is not, we are not sharing this directly because that is not the objective. The objective is to get the ideas of humanity to get into their own creativity. What is this object? Where is it located? Have I already seen it but dismissed it? Has it been something I've been aware of and yet it no longer is able to be seen? Oh, I think that's a play on words about it being from the past, no longer, or maybe it has something to do with the light, the length of the light. And we play with this for now. Let us just say that many are qualified to show beautiful alignments of the star systems that we have had access to up until this point. We would venture to say that there is so much more. And as we learn and allow ourselves to grow and learn from each other, we quit compartmentalizing what it is we think we know. For each department holds a key. There is no one particular pattern that is the only set pattern for all of us to abide by. For where it is that we abide, play on words, is taking us to a whole new level. And in order to reach that level, we must begin to combine our resources, to quit misdirecting the energy and deflecting the energy to hold on to a new paradigm that is actually of an old revelation that needs to be combined with the new reality. And this is something that we would venture to say is going to take some time to learn how to play with one another in this new playground. For there are toys that many of us do not want to let go of and do not wish to share. There are toys that scare us, and we do not wish to play on. To climb up that ladder is not necessarily for all of us to wish to do at the same time. So, in this now time, create and co create in a playful way that allows for these questions to be asked and answered without the hostility that would grow better. So, the answers would grow better in a hospitality, in a hospitable way. And this allows for the sacredness of these messages, the sacredness of what our ancestors did know, along with the magic of the new revelations that are going to combine to allow us to dissolve this distortion. And so it is. All right. So that was the little Q&A about that. And I'm going to play with that maybe more at a later time. This is obviously up for multidimensional interpretation. So depending on your own knowledge of this, depending on the dimensional frequencies that we're able to access, there's no hierarchy here. Will be where this information comes from, what it means, just like the words that I use. One person will hear one thing, one person will hear something else. There is no right or wrong. It's a matter of us allowing ourselves to revel in the magic a little bit and to get ready for some big surprises. I don't know when, but this is the message that I'm receiving. So in love and light, I'm hearing very soon. Of course, how soon is now? Right? What is that? Morrissey or the Smiths? All right. Lots of love, guys. Namaste.